Hi there. Thanks for joining my devlog. This week, I did something else with the horror theme project thing I was working on. And that old orb, forget it. I made a rectangle. More specifically, I made a wall. Made a level that starts with the light. If you walk into the trigger box, the wall appears and selects behavior to perform, and then it disappears. I have the behavior tree set up to perform various actions, but the only one that I actually have properly set up is the good old wrestling move, rotating menacingly at you. So in order to do that, it starts with this trigger box, which in the event graph for that, you have a collision component, right? And when the actor overlaps, I have it set to the first person character, and that will spawn the actor and create a behavior type. I only have it set up for rotate because I only have that one set up, but with idle, push, I'll just, and smash. That way, it'll just randomly select one. You can see up in the top left, smash. But, and then delay, waits 5 seconds, and destroys the actor. That's just all placeholder at the moment. Then I have it set up so that it won't toggle again. So when the player leaves the overlap zone, it disables the collision so it can't happen again. That's all that is. And then inside the wall, here's the behavior tree. So the behavior type, it selects a random one, and this comes out to an enum I set up here, and that's all of these settings. And then these branch out, and I have rotate set up, so I have a timeline here, just set for a simple curve. And on update, set the actor rotation. And on that simple curve, I have the Z rotate, so set that as a make rotator and set that into the rotation. I went to go set up some of these other ones. Push just kind of pushes the character, and smash, I had an idea to just kind of smash down, bam bam. But I didn't get those set up. And then I have the wall spawner, which I was going to have spawn right next to the player, that I just never actually finished this logic, so it's not currently doing anything. So that's that. But then I got a little bored of this and moved to a different project. And that project was a Poon Boat. Harpoons, that is. And not that boat. That boat. And in this project, you spawn, you're on a boat. You can walk into the Poon area, click to fire, and then you can pull the boat along. I was working on getting the boat's angular constraints to work, so it wouldn't just list over and capsize, but that happens. So I need to fix that. Okay, so to explain the logic behind all that, let me start with the Poon gun, the harpoon itself. On the overlap with the third person character, so the interaction box, which is this box here. When the player overlaps with that box, we set the current player inside as the player that just overlapped the interaction box, and then we set the equipped Poon gun to self, which is the overlapped box, and then the target is the third person character. And then on end overlap, the other actor is equal to the current player inside here, then we set the current player inside to nothing, and then we set the equipped Poon gun to nothing of the target third-person character. And then we do our server request pull stop. I am trying to get this multiplayer ready. I've never made multiplayer and dealt with replications, so this is all new to me, so I'm hoping it'll work. And the server stop pull server request stop pull is the finished pooning. So if it's when we stop pulling the overlap, it'll unattach the poon and get the valid boat reference, and then stop the pull, which the stop the pull will set is being pulled to false, set the current pull strength to 0, and return vector 0 for the poon target location. Now, additional to that, how we attach the harpoon end to the hit. We have a server attached to hit. These all execute on the server. So over here, it's just run on server, and that way it'll work with multiplayer. And we get the in impact point and the in impact normal, and then we set the impact point and the impact normal to whatever it just hit, and then we take the impact. Well, I have the impact point set up to be debugged so I can tell where it is, and then we set the as attached boolean to true. Then down here, to once we are attached, we can pull. So server request pull, same thing, executes on server only, has a pull strength input, and we check if the harpoon has been attached. So if that equals true, then we server start poon pull with the boat reference, current impact point, and our pull strength, which the start poon pull here. So the poon target location, it gets set to whatever was put in on the current impact point, and then we set is being pulled to true, and the pull strength here is set to the current pull strength from this input. Okay, that was quite a lot. We're not done yet though. So let me handle the input a little bit for firing the poon. I have an input set up here. So we have an input action here called fire. So we have input action here that I called fire to fire the harpoon, and it checks if the equipped poon gun is not equal to empty. Then we move on and check if the current player inside from the equipped poon gun is equal to self, then we fire. So we check if the current player inside the poon interaction box is the player itself. Then we do the fire poon, server, execute. Okay, same thing, run on server to replicate it. From here, we have a line trace to get the actor viewpoint from the player character, the out location from the start, and then the forward vector times the poon length, which this is just a custom variable, which I can change, plus the out location, that's the end. And then we break the hit result and pull out the blocking hit, and if that is true, if there's something that it can find, then it sets the impact point and the impact normal to this, which those are what gets led into the attached to hit. then we have our pull input action, which this checks if the equipped Poon gun is not equal to 0. That is true. Then we can request the pull and from the Poon gun with the pull strength. And that's just this that we went over before. And then if when the pull has been completed, it checks if the Poon gun is valid and then requests a stop, which just unattaches and stops pulling everything. And then in the boat, we have on event tick, I have a forward force, which all it does, I can have it set up to where it can move forward on its own. It currently doesn't have any type of controls from the player. That's something I intend to add. But to do that, we on event tick, we check has authority. And if that's true, has authority to my understanding is make sure that it is able to be ran on the server so there's no issues, because all of these are replicated, either rep notify or replicated entirely on the server. That's, to my understanding, gonna help make multiplayer work. I hope that's true. But so if it does have authority, then the boat, if the boat mesh is simulating physics, then we move on and add some force. And this just is forward vector with the throttle and the max forward force here. And that equals our force. And then moving forward, we have the steering torque, which will eventually be set up to a steering wheel, just not currently linked to anything, but the logic is there. And then the boat counterforce to kind of make it seem more boat-like. Adding here will make it have more anti-force, counterforce. And then here's the Poon force logic. So this is the pull logic. So here's our is being pulled. So when you are being pulled, we add force on the boat mesh, and that force is the boat mesh's world location subtracted from the Poon target location, and then you normalize that, times that by the current pull strength, times that by the Poon force, times that by the delta time, delta seconds. And that equals our Poon's pull force. And that is that logic. And then I definitely did not get distracted again with finishing a course from GameDev.tv. And by finishing, I mean get halfway through the class and abandon the concept to just make a cinematic dungeon environment instead. I'll post that video later this week and maybe go back and finish the courses. But this was my last week or two in game dev. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe and all that. Goodbye.